Hi, welcome to the Functions of Behavior Basics, and this is for children's 4 to 8. I'm Sandra Alexander, a speech therapist and also the mother of somebody on the autism spectrum. And we're glad to have you here. So let's dive on in and see what else we can learn today. So, all behavior is learned because we certainly don't come out knowing what we're doing, right? So, at first, it's kind of a trial and error thing. A baby cries, mom comes, and then a baby would learn to connect those two events. So, behaviors are learned, good and bad behaviors are learned. And data is collected when we're examining the behavior of somebody by antecedent behavior and consequence. And we talked about this in other webinars. Um, it's a useful method for collecting all kinds of data and to keeping it straight. So we'll look at what's going on before the behavior, what the behavior is, and what the consequence is. And that helps us to identify why is he crying? But it's even though it seems easy, there's lots of little factors. Um, but remember, an antecedent is before, then there's the behavior, and then the consequence, which is what happens after the behavior. And sometimes what happens will help maintain a bad behavior. So here's examples here. Parent says, sit down, child sits, and the kid's given an M&M. Or the parent says to the child, please quiet down while you're working, and then they get praised. Or if the child's playing alone, a neighbor asks the child to join a game, and the child joins a game. So that's, it's not always as direct as this, but this helps us understand it. So we record the sequence, and then we kind of understand the target behavior and the events around it. We want to see what naturally occurs in the environment. That really helps us understand what is going on. So once again, we have to consider the consequences of a behavior. And they give an example here. If a child's throwing items, and they'll define it very, very specifically, any instance which a child displaces or throws an items of, let's say, 12 inches or more. For each of the following behaviors, a sibling or a peer can act differently. For example, they can laugh, throw the item back, and a parent may react differently. They might reprimand the child, repeat the instruction to continue to work, offer assistance, or ignore the behavior. When collecting data on this sort of thing, we look for patterns. What's working, what isn't? Does it always happen this way? What's occurring immediately before and after? And considering all the things in the environment. So there are different functions of behavior, and behavior can be maintained or eliminated by the following. Like you could, be somebody's paying attention to you, even if it's you're doing something bad and you want to get attention, you're going to keep doing the bad thing if you can't get attention any other way, because children want to be attended to. So also they could be maintained by, if I cry enough, I'm going to get the phone from mom to play my game. Or if I cry enough, I don't have to do my work. So that's the kind of thing that's going on here. And then another example would be if a child's hitting his head, a parent can come over and say, stop hitting your head. So in that case, the attention is a verbal reprimand. In a second example from that, a child hits his head and says, and the parent can say, hey, are you okay? And or a third instance would be the child hits his head and the parent might physically come and not say anything, but they may go over to the child. And we have to be aware of this and notice what's keeping the behavior going or what changes are occurring. So once you know the function, what else should you look at? And there's a lot of parts here. Ask more questions. When is it occurring? Around what things? And who does it occur with? Because people act differently when they're with different people, and we all know this. So there are strategies to help with this. We can change things that happen before the behavior once we notice the pattern. So we'd want to maybe try to avoid triggers. And some of the triggers could be the environment, the instruction, or the kind of content. So this is all around classroom, but this works at home as well. Um, and what we're trying to do, of course, is find the function and change the behavior. So we're going to ask for, try to erase the behavior or change the behavior, which is a better way to put it, by using a non-contingent reinforcement. And what that fancy term basically means is that we want to reduce the problematic behavior, but we'll give the child access to something they want without them behaving for it. So you might want to reward them when they're not hitting their head, or hey, you're working quietly. I'm going to give you something you want, like a piece of fruit or a 5-second break from what you're doing when you're noticing something good is happening. And that way, if the child's getting praised for when they're not doing it, they might start reducing the behavior because they'll say, hey, I don't need to do this to get what I want. Now, there's also consequence-based strategies. And normally you're trying to reduce the inappropriate behavior with non-punishment. Okay, so it's really important, try not to use punishment unless you absolutely have to, because it's hard on everybody. We all know that. So, and there's different ways to reinforce behavior, and we can go more into that in other webinars. Let's see, and then, so here's some functional assessment tips. We're going to rule out or understand the influence. Remember, you have to think about this. Is the child on meds? Has his meds changed? Does he feel bad? Is he tired, hot, cold, constipated? Hey, if you're not feeling well, you're not going to perform well, right? What's going on in the context? Is it noisy? Is somebody yelling? Are there interesting smells in the room? And if you've changed routines, you need to consider this. All of this affects everybody, and especially our children, but it affects all of us. We're all human. Whether you're on the spectrum or not, you're all human. So I would like to put in here that we are more than just our behaviors. We are a person. We need to consider everything and consider the big picture. So I appreciate everybody coming to this presentation by Maihana. And if you have any questions, please look at other webinars and do your research. And remember, love your child as they are and work with them. And together we're on the journey. Thanks a lot, Sandra Alexander, speech therapist and mom of somebody on the spectrum.